Pretty spectacular. Yeah, I'm Troy Cross. I'm a professor of philosophy and also a longtime Bitcoiner and a fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute, where I work on issues concerning energy and the environment. I'd like to take some time right now to tell my story, how I came from teaching metaphysics and epistemology to standing under an inflatable astronaut and bathed in orange in Amsterdam. And the journey starts in 2011, where I discovered Bitcoin in the spring of 2011. I think on the first day I heard about Bitcoin, I read the white paper and started mining by evening. The sort of thing you could do back then. I was really taken with this beautiful idea of Bitcoin itself, and also the community on the Bitcoin Talk forums that to me represented a new way of knowing and a new way of building. It was something outside of the academy. It was something outside of the system that we live in. And being someone who was inside of the system to some degree as a professor, watching totally uncredentialed people build something that the central bankers, the media, the government, and the academics had completely missed was really thrilling to me. And it was kind of a guilty pleasure to partake in it and to see how someone outside the system, without reforming the system from within, could build a separate track, a more just and fair and open kind of monetary system that lay outside of the bounds of possibility for economists who already thought they knew what money was. I said I started mining right away when I read the white paper, but that was just on my CPU. Very shortly thereafter, I set up a couple of mining towers in my basement with graphics cards. And I was getting heavily involved in the debates on Bitcoin Talk Forum, reading and learning, sometimes arguing. And there was a lot of FUD back then. There still is a lot of FUD. But probably the most powerful was that Bitcoin was tiny and could be 51% attacked very easily at the time. But the one that got me was the energy FUD. I did my own math in 2011 on what would happen if Bitcoin's market cap equaled the market cap of gold. How much power would the Bitcoin mining network incentivize if you spent almost a Bitcoin to mine a Bitcoin, and much of your energy expenditure, your expenditure was on energy? And I don't remember my results. I don't have them preserved, but it was enough for me to think I couldn't be a part of it. As much as I loved the concept of Bitcoin, the idea that this network could kind of take over the energy consumption of the world was terrifying. And, well, this was a prediction, actually, that Newsweek made and the World Economic Forum made in 2017, that Bitcoin mining, the network, would consume all of the world's energy by 2020, where obviously that didn't come to pass. Obviously, my own math was incorrect and based on a number of misunderstandings. But that initial calculation was enough to put me off. Life happened. I had kids. I bought a house. I stayed marginally involved with Bitcoin. But this worry persisted with me. And it wasn't really until about 2020, when I got seriously interested in Bitcoin again, that I started to do the deep dive on Bitcoin energy and the environment. I read the work of Nick Carter, who, if you're interested in this issue, you should definitely read. Lynn Alden, Haas McCook, and of course I just thought about it myself. And I realized that not only was Bitcoin not a threat to the planet and a threat to the energy systems, but it could actually be a very powerful tool in our transition to a renewable and abundant energy future. And here again, I found myself in two worlds. I'm, like everyone else, reading mainstream media and talking to other academics, where the word on the street is that Bitcoin boils the oceans, that it's a dirty coin, that it's energy inefficient, unlike proof of stake, let's say. And that was where part of my mind was. And the other part of my mind and my life was talking to actual Bitcoiners, doing the research. And once again, there were competing narratives. And what I see right now is a massive divide between what you hear about Bitcoin and the truth about Bitcoin. In fact, I've never seen a narrative divide that is so stark as the popular press on Bitcoin and energy and the environment right now, and what I hear and what I see working inside of Bitcoin. I tell my students that tension and conflict in their papers is not something to be avoided. My students always have a thesis, and then they have some evidence that's counter to their thesis, and they say, what do I do? And my advice is always lean into it, because where there's narrative tension, there's an amazing story to be told. And I was attracted to that narrative tension in 2011 with Bitcoin and money itself. And here's where I see the most narrative tension now. The story that you're being told about Bitcoin and what I actually see. So let me go a bit into what I see, my vision of Bitcoin's present and Bitcoin's future with relation to energy and the environment. Okay, it's hard to know where to begin with misconceptions about Bitcoin and energy use because it starts early. Like something as simple as the halving. I think people don't really come to grips with the halving. We know that Bitcoin's issuance cuts in half every 4 years. It started at 50 Bitcoin per block, then 25, 12.5, 6.25, and soon to be 3.125. People don't cognize exponential functions very well. Jeff Booth often uses this example of taking a piece of paper and asking how many times you would have to fold it until it's, if you folded it 50 times, how tall would it be? And the answer is that it would stretch to the sun. Actually, 42 times would stretch to the moon. 10 times would reach the width of a human hand. So there are 32 halvings in Bitcoin in the total history, meaning if you had a piece of paper that was already folded and reached the moon, and you unfolded it 32 times, you would reach the width of a human hand. So Bitcoin's issuance is declining. That may itself be a problem, but it's not a problem for energy use. It's something as simple as the halving. But of course, it gets much more advanced than that. Bitcoin mining is a really unique, totally unique and unprecedented form of energy consumption. It's portable, it's scalable, it's location agnostic, it's time agnostic. It can be cut off at any time. It can be attenuated. This makes it, it's also that Bitcoin itself is a fungible good. The Bitcoin produced in one part of the world at one time, it's identical to the Bitcoin in value to a Bitcoin that's produced elsewhere. And it can be instantly sold on a global market. Okay. So, it just so happens that this kind of a consumer of energy consumer of energy, can help to address the problems that we face in making the energy transition. I'm going to talk about two of those problems and how these features help us address it. The first of these problems is methane, CH4. Methane is a warming gas. It is 84 times as warming as CO2 is over a 20-year period. It's 25 times as warming over a 100-year period. So it's an extremely efficient blanket keeping heat in the Earth's atmosphere. CH4 is being emitted, about half of it's due to human activity and about half of it's due to natural activity. It's being emitted in isolated pockets all over the world due to things like oil and gas exploration, due to agriculture, due to landfills. And the methane that's just escaping we call vented methane. It's responsible for up to 1/3 of all warming. It could be responsible for as much as half of all warming in the next 20 years. What do we do about methane? Well, we can burn it. CH4 is a fuel. It's actually not just a pollutant, it's also a form of energy. And we have Bitcoin miners that are actually using that energy to hash. When a Bitcoin miner sees venting methane in a landfill or on a farm or at an oil well, they see sats that are simply going to waste. So for instance, Vespine Energy sets up on landfills in the US. There are 2,600 landfills on the US. Half of them don't even capture their gas. Only 500 of them capture their gas and turn it into electricity. So Vespine's business model is, because it's location agnostic and scalable, set up a genset on those sites, burn the methane, generate electricity, do some mining with the electricity. On farms, the same thing is happening. Ricardo Carmona is a farmer in Mexico, a farm of 10,000 pigs, built a methane digester and is using the energy from that methane digester to mine Bitcoin. So here's what the UN calls the strongest lever we have to fight climate change, which is methane mitigation. And Bitcoin miners helping to mitigate that by turning CH4 into CO2 in combustion and making an economic good out of it. This one molecule, CH4, which is a pollutant, is also energy and a source of value. And here's where the narrative around Bitcoin's energy use, as far as I can tell, is exactly upside down. The narrative is we want to use less energy. Sustainability and abundance are in tension. When we have a scarce good like energy, we want to use less of it. But there are some kinds of energy use which we want more of, actually, to create a sustainable world. For instance, combusting methane. There's another kind of energy use we want more of, and that is using curtailed solar, wind energy that would otherwise be wasted. We want to sell every watt of renewable energy. Why? Because that monetizes the renewable project. We also need financing for renewable projects in general, sometimes in advance of grid connection. So the IEA, the International Energy Association, lists the number one problem for renewable rollout as a lack of funding. Since Bitcoin as mining is time agnostic, location agnostic, scalable, interruptible, miners can provide a buyer of first resort to underwrite the construction of a project. They can also provide be buyers of last resort to take electrons that the grid doesn't want. And there's quite a bit of that in the renewable system. The big picture, according to the IEA and other experts, on what we need to do to fight climate change is electrify everything. We need to electrify our economy, meaning switch from internal combustion engines to electrical motors, meaning switch our heat from fossil heat to electrical heat. In order to do this, we're going to have to build out our electrical generation by threefold or fourfold, because we'll have a lot more electrical demand replacing fossil with electrical. When we do that, because renewables are intermittent, we will have a lot more wasted energy. We will have a lot of curtailed energy. That curtailed energy isn't being sold and therefore isn't monetizing the projects. Bitcoin mining comes in, pays for the energy that would otherwise be wasted. And here's where another feature Bitcoin mining comes in. It's extremely price sensitive. The miners right now are learning the truth about mining. It's a brutal, zero-sum competitive game. There's 900 Bitcoin minted every day. And if you want to mine that Bitcoin, you're going to get some share of that. And the more miners that come on, the more hash rate that comes on, the more difficult it is to get that share, the more you have to pay to put into it. That means your inputs matter a lot. And the biggest input to your balance sheet is the price of electricity. So miners use only the cheapest electricity. What does that mean? Waste energy, energy that others don't want. If you're only paying 2 cents a kilowatt hour, 3 cents a kilowatt hour for power, by definition, that you're not mining here on grid energy. You're not mining in Europe where there's an energy crisis. That doesn't make any sense. You're mining where there's remote hydro. You're mining on a hydro plant in Kenya, in a village that wouldn't otherwise exist without that mining. You're mining on a flare stack in Alberta, where otherwise what oil and gas companies do is simply burn methane, let it combust in a flare stack. Miners use a genset and combust the same gas in an internal combustion engine, driving a generator. So miners come in and use what would otherwise be unused and wasted forms of power. And this is where the paradox that blows people's mind is we have an energy crisis and we have a climate crisis. And you're telling me that there's this thing that uses energy and it's going to help the energy crisis? It uses energy and it's going to help the climate crisis? How is that possible? What we need to do is conserve energy, not use it. We don't need a new load. We need to cut down on existing electrical loads. And this is what I see from the inside. It's like, no, actually. There is a form of energy consumption that makes those problems worse. If you add to peak load, pick that time of day when power is most in demand, and you add to it, you're making the problem worse. But if you use power in the times of day when other people are not using it, you actually make the problem better because you've now monetized energy that otherwise had no buyer. Right? And likewise with methane. Every bit of methane that's burned is a pollutant that is reduced. So that's my perspective. From the inside, I see Bitcoin as much maligned. I see it as a powerful tool for incentivizing renewable build-out. I see it as a powerful tool for reducing and mitigating the emissions of methane. There's one more reason that I haven't gone into that I'm here tonight, and that's I had an idea, and that's why I came public in the Bitcoin community. I had an idea for how to hold Bitcoin in a carbon neutral way that respected the fungibility of Bitcoin itself. And I'll give you the idea very briefly and try to say why it matters. So the idea is this. We have these good forms of mining that I've pointed out good. Good from the perspective of environmentalists and energy advocates. There are forms of mining that are socially beneficial for more than just their defense of the network. And here's the idea. If you hold a certain amount of Bitcoin, if you want to hold that Bitcoin in a carbon neutral way, let's say you hold 2% of all Bitcoin. The program to hold your Bitcoin in a carbon neutral way is to do the same percentage of all mining as you own of all Bitcoin. So the advice would be do 2% of mining if you hold 2% of Bitcoin, and do mining in one of those pro-social ways, one of those ways that actually greens the network. So, for instance, mining on methane, or mining that would be otherwise vented or flared inefficiently, or mining on a renewable project that wouldn't otherwise exist without that mining because the mining is financing it, or mining with curtailed solar. Mining in some way that's carbon neutral. And here's how it works. When you mine, you add to hash rate. When you add to hash rate, blocks are found faster than they otherwise would be. Blocks come 10 minutes apart. When you add to hash rate, they start coming closer together than 10 minutes. This is what has just happened. We just had a difficulty adjustment, right? In 2016 blocks, you get a difficulty adjustment. We returned the average block time to 10 minutes. So when you add to hash rate, you increase the difficulty for all other miners on the network. That is a disincentive to everyone else to mine. And when you hold Bitcoin, you provide an incentive to everyone to mine because miners are paid in Bitcoin. And by buying and holding Bitcoin, you make the price of Bitcoin higher than it would otherwise be. So when you're a holder, you're incentivizing the miners. In fact, all mining is incentivized by all holding. And when you're a miner, you're disincentivizing all other mining by entering as a competitor in a zero-sum game. To hold Bitcoin in a carbon neutral way, all you have to do is balance those two incentives. And I find that point of equilibrium to be the point where you do the same percentage of all mining as you own of all Bitcoin. I developed this idea and wrote it up in a white paper with Andrew Bailey. And I've been hawking it ever since. And I am trying to develop it with a number of companies. If you're interested, hit me up. But here's the point. Bitcoin mining is already trending in this direction because it just so happens that the cheapest power is the power that is non-rivalrous. It's non-rival. Others, you aren't competing with others for it. And it's also green. Right now, we're fortunate that the curve for solar power costs has gotten, this is of course varies by geography, but it is cheaper to build out and operate a new solar generation facility than it is to simply operate a gas one. Well, particularly here, but on average, actually. So the cheapest power is now stranded power, renewable power, stranded methane. It just so happens to align with social. So this trend where hash rate, because margins in mining are shrinking, hash rate is getting pressed into pro-social forms. This is a general trend that doesn't depend on my idea whatsoever. That's just happening brutally. I know it's painful for a lot of miners who signed contracts for power that was more expensive during the bull run when we had a shortage of ASICs. But thinking socially, it's excellent. Mining is entering a role that following someone else, I call the dung beetle role of energy, eating up only the cheapest waste energy around the world. And that is actually enhancing the availability of energy by financing energy build-out. And it's helping us speed our path to decarbonization. However, I'm also working at the same time on building tools that will help you as a Bitcoiner hold your Bitcoin in a carbon neutral and pro-social way by doing some mining yourself. Right now, that's very difficult for many of us to do because miners are loud and hot, and they take a lot of power in your house or apartment. Studio apartment is no place for a latest gen miner. But hopefully soon there will be vehicles in which you can do this. And so this is where I see the future. What I see in the FUD is Bitcoin is like destroying the planet. We need to get away from it. We need to get away from proof of work. My vision is starkly in contrast with that. It's like, no, proof of work actually holds the key to financing our transition to renewables and to handling waste methane. I got to say, too, we're learning to use the heat from Bitcoin mining. All of the energy that goes into a miner is preserved, conserved, and it becomes heat. I saw just on some of the materials that Hive is using that heat for greenhouses. Miners are finding many creative uses for heat. They're growing 800 tons of cucumbers with the heat from miners. Right? That's a pro-social use of energy, in addition to securing the network. One way to think about a miner is a heater that does some computation along the way. A simple resistance heater that does some computation. Another way to think about a miner is a flare stack that burns methane, but which does some computation along the way with that heat. Right. So this is the future I see. It's hopeful. Bitcoin is pro-social. And we in the Bitcoin community will have fights about the best energy source. Bitcoiners are incredibly well educated on energy. We will have fights about how much measures we should take to combat global warming, to mitigate methane and so on. I think in a way, none of this really matters. Those of you who are interested in holding Bitcoin in a carbon neutral way, you can do it just by mining. Those of you who aren't, don't have to. Methane mitigation is so powerful that if around 1/30 of all hashing takes place on vented methane, because methane is such a warming gas, the entire network is carbon neutral equivalent. We don't need Bitcoiners to agree. We don't need nation states to agree. We don't need massive multinational agreements for this to happen. And in fact, it will happen despite regulations and regulators trying to stop it. That's the vision I have. Bitcoin as transformative, as voluntary, and as not requiring agreement. Thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Troy Cross.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine Analyst Desk, brought to you by BitGo. We are coming to you live from Bitcoin Amsterdam, and I'm joined now by Dennis Cook, Rebel Money, and Marcus Connor. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. We've just now heard from Troy Cross, who gave a passionate speech talking about how Bitcoin not only helps one community, but actually helps all of us in pushing the planet forward. As much as I love this conversation, though, that's not what we're here to talk about. No Bitcoin conference can or ever will be complete without an art exhibit. Shout out to our boy Gucci T Money, all the way back, holding down the fort in Nashville. We miss you out here, buddy. Hope you're doing well. But Dennis, I wanted to first just hear from you. You put together the art exhibit here, featured at Bitcoin Amsterdam. Talk us through a little bit what you put together and how it's been playing out today.
Yeah, well, first of all, it leans into a lot more of our European artists, which is great. It's not a very large exhibition, which also is kind of a relief given the scale of how Miami is. But yeah, it's more intimate, and the exhibition hall is absolutely packed. A lot of interaction with the art gallery. It's really fun to see. And most of the items are available for bidding on Scarcity, and I anticipate some lively auction action.
So just really echo that. For you viewers watching at home, this means you have the opportunity to actually bid on and win any of the art pieces shown in today's gallery. This is not normal in most of our other Bitcoin conferences, so we're opening up the doors for any of you at home who are watching if the FOMO is settling in. Money, talk to us a little bit about just what's going on over there and how they can access that.
So everyone can bid on Scarce.city. You head over there, and it's really simple. You can either do Lightning payments or on-chain payments in there. get your bids in, and you can own a piece of Bitcoin culture by some of the best artists in the world right now. They're on display here, but also available around the world as well. And the response we've had just from the general public, either that have discovered Bitcoin art for the first time, or actual art appreciators here, has been phenomenal. And I've been speaking to artists, including this man on my left here today, about the experience. And for artists as well, it's great for them to come out, speak to people, speak about the art, and the passion here is really strong in Amsterdam.
No, definitely. And I'm going to dox you a little bit now, but Marcus over here, all the way at the end of the table, is actually the brains behind the roller coaster meme as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the art that you've done and put together?
Yeah, thanks. I actually created the Bitcoin roller coaster originally in April 2013, which was not even my first Bitcoin art, but shortly after there. And luckily, other Bitcoin lovers took him and created him into the meme. I was just the artist. But today I have a new piece in the in the gallery here at the conference, and it's titled FOMO. So, it's a really great setup with the art. It looks excellent, and I'm excited about it.
And Saturday's a really big anniversary for you as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. So this Saturday is the 10-year anniversary of my very first Bitcoin art that I created, and that was on. I used to have a daily webcomic called Brainless Tales, and the comic in particular was titled Bitcoin. So, so 10 years for me, in Bitcoin art.
During this 10-year period, how have you seen Bitcoin art transition and change from when you started making Bitcoin art and what it's turned into today?
Well, it's exploded. It's incredible. And honestly, I created Bitcoin art in 2012 and 2013, and then I didn't for a while. I was doing other art, and because at the time, it didn't seem that there was really a Bitcoin art space. I was just reacting to what I loved. I've always been an artist, and I loved Bitcoin. I learned about it, fairly early, and so that's why I created it. And then a couple of years I took off, and I came back, and the artists that were really in it at the time, welcomed me in and embraced me, and I'm really thankful for that. I really love seeing all the different takes on Bitcoin art. I love the new artists and the established ones, and just all the different, ideas that really build around this idea of freedom, because that's really what Bitcoin is based around. That, we're human beings, we own ourselves, and we should be free to control our lives in the way that we want, because we don't need to be subject to be told how to communicate and share with other people. And Bitcoin allows us to do that. We don't have to rely on a central authority to give me permission to send money anywhere. And money is so important because it's this accountability of our actions, really, And so, I just love the space because I'm a big lover of liberty and freedom, personal freedom for everybody, and Bitcoin's great for that.
So well said. Rebel Money, you brought up how you've had conversations throughout today with different artists. I'd love if you could share with our audience a little bit about what those conversations have been like, how the artists felt at this conference, especially compared to some other exhibits and opportunities they've had.
So it's a chance to get really up and close with the public, first of all, and talk about their pieces. And every single artist I've talked to said, what a fantastic, extremely well-run operation this is to start with. Nice from Dennis. And on top of that as well, training professional, obviously Scarce City with them as well, running the auctions in the background. It's kind of seamless. And, for artists, this is really important time to get their messages across there. Like, Mark was impassionately speaking there about freedom and liberty. That's, kind of what Bitcoin art is about. It's about celebrating this message of Bitcoin, which is so important, and Bitcoin culture as well. It's been an absolute. That's only day one, We got another 2 days of this to go, man.
Don't remind me now. Marcus, you've had the opportunity to attend many of Bitcoin conferences throughout your time in this space. How has the first day of Bitcoin Amsterdam compared to other conferences you've attended?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I love the energy here. This space is, physically smaller than the Miami conferences, which are huge now. And I really love the intimacy of it. I mean, we're just, there's some really great spaces here. And so, obviously the physical space smaller, but it's really intimate and very warm atmosphere. I'm really, and it's beautiful. The venue here is beautiful. So I like it.
Love that. If you are in the area and the FOMO is starting to kick in, tickets are still available at a discount. I will shamelessly plug, use the promo code BMLive. Not that it matters, the competitions are over, but I want to go around for each of you and just ask, what was your favorite talk from today and what are you most excited to hear tomorrow? Dennis.
Oh, my goodness. My favorite talk has been with some of these artists. I correspond with them via email all the time. Sometimes we Skype or video conference, but seeing people in person is such a difference. And I'm just so happy to hear some of what Marcus just said, because that's how we all feel. And, sometimes the relationship that an artist can have with the existing art world can be somewhat contentious or, even exploitative with galleries and such. This is a very positive community, and I'm really happy to help link other people. And this venue has been gorgeous, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for me, I've spent most of my day on the Scarcity stand, actually. So for me, it's talking with the plebs, just going and having those conversations with people that are incredibly passionate about Bitcoin culture and where we are, and getting to meet them face to face as well. So I really hope that continues more tomorrow, and urge anyone that's coming along tomorrow to come along to Scarcity Stand, just have a chat about Bitcoin art, chat about anything. We're really up for it.
Yeah, I didn't make any of the talks today either. So, but no, going to a conference, I'm going to echo what these two guys said. Going to a conference, it's about meeting people and talking to people. I love, of course, now I know a lot of people, so I get to see my friends, but just meeting new people and just hearing other people, what they have to say. That's what being at a conference, that's the real value. You're here with people in real life. Now we can really talk eye to eye. It's not online. It's so different in person. And the talks, of course, are wonderful to go to. I didn't go to any yet, but I will go to some. But yeah, it's all about meeting people and just feeling the energy. So, if you haven't been to a Bitcoin conference and you love Bitcoin, please make it a point to go to at least one Bitcoin conference. Come to this one if you can. They're just wonderful to be in,
We do have 2 more days of this conference, but of course, Bitcoin 2023 is going to go down in Miami next year in May. So lock in your tickets now for that. There is a promo code available for the next 3 days. Use code Amsterdam to get 21% off. Gentlemen, that's going to conclude day 1 of Bitcoin Amsterdam. For everyone watching at home, make sure to like and subscribe down below. We're going to be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. our time, 9:30, something like that. We will be back. You are not going to want to miss that. I will be back again. They will not let me leave this desk for some reason. Like and subscribe. We will be back tomorrow.